USC entering a big game unbeaten. It's great for Trojans Wire, of course, but it spices up the college football season. We can admit that, even if you're not partial to USC, it certainly spices things up. And already an interesting plot point for USC Utah week. Let's get it right into that. I mean, we'll talk about the USC Washington State game, but let's just set the scene for USC Utah week, because we're going to be talking a lot about that game, as we should. So Kyle Whittingham gets asked about, hey, have you known Lincoln Riley? How well do you know him? And he just goes into some comments about NIL and money, and how NIL is creating a world of the haves versus the have-nots in college football. And it was, Whittingham didn't say anything incendiary or mean or nasty. He just said, I'm concerned about where this is leading college football, et cetera, et cetera. Pretty, standard language. So, he's not deviating from what other coaches and administrators feel about NIL, just kind of, general voicing of concerns. But, why would he bother to say that when asked, how well do you know Lincoln Riley? Because he doesn't know him very much. He said so. He's saying this for a reason, right? This is not happening by accident. And so the political play, we're already seeing the jujitsu in terms of the whole week and setting up expectations. It's a lot like politics, creating the expectations, right? So Whittingham, after his team got kicked in the teeth by UCLA, he's saying, we're the poor little old underdogs here, and we got mighty USC coming into Salt Lake City, and man, I don't know how we're going to do this. This is the big bad wolf. It's the giant, it's Goliath coming in to Salt Lake City. But Utah was supposed to be Goliath in this game, or at least in terms of preseason expectations. Utah was picked across the board to win the Pac-12. USC was picked third behind Bo Nix and Oregon, as well as the Utes. All right. USC was picked to be 9-3. I think 9-3 was the general preseason consensus for most college football pundits, publications, media outlets. And if it wasn't 9-3, more outlets were going to lean toward 8-4 rather than 10-2. Okay. And so if anyone comes up to you on the street, or if anyone comes up to you online and says, this is the proving ground for USC, this will show us if this is a real team or not. Well, that wasn't the preseason expectation all y'all put up there. The preseason expectation was 9-3. This team was going to step in potholes against Oregon State, against Stanford, against Washington State. USC hasn't stepped in a pothole yet. And so let's not redraw the boundaries now that we're here. All right. The college football playoff was not the standard for USC in year one. Obviously expected to get there pretty soon, probably in year two, for sure by year three, not in year one. This was, the cupboard was thin, had depth problems, getting rid of the Clay Helton mess, establishing the culture. People thought it was going to take time, et cetera, et cetera. So no, this is not the measuring stick game for USC. Is it an important game? Of course it is. Is it a huge opportunity? Of course it is. But it's not like the game that will tell us about the real USC. No, the USC season was about, they're going to stumble against a team they probably ought to beat. They're going to have some messes. They're going to have the season's going to spin sideways on them in a few games, and they're not going to measure up and be a 10-win team or an 11-win team. Well, they're on track to win 10 games, even if they lose to Utah. And with Notre Dame being weak, that game certainly shapes up as a game USC is more likely to win than lose at this point. I mean, USC is very likely to win 10, and if it beats UCLA in what is now shaping up as the Pac-12 game of the year, USC goes 11-1. So this Utah game is not like the definer, the revealer. Don't let people rewrite the narrative. Don't let people shift the goalpost relative to preseason projections and off-season talk. USC was supposed to be a third-place team in the conference, 9-3 overall. This is free money. This is like a $50 free bet or at least a risk-free token, this is USC's chance to swing for the fences. And if it loses, the costs are not significant. USC's still in position to play for the Pac-12 title, to play for a spot in the Pac-12 championship game, in that game against UCLA in November, because you have Arizona, Cal, Colorado, 3 layups after the Utah game. So USC is going to be likely 9-1 overall, 7-1 in the Pac-12, going into the UCLA game with everything to play for. So this Utah game, it's that risk-free token. And this is not to say that there's no pressure on USC. I mean, USC's offense was terrible against Oregon State in a night game. So there's certainly plenty for Caleb Williams and Lincoln Riley to prove. Can we handle a hostile environment? Can we lift our standard? Can we go into one of the Pac-12's toughest road environments at night in prime time? Like, this is a showcase. This is important, yes, but pressure's on Utah, folks. And in terms of meeting preseason expectations, the Utes have already underperformed. They have to win out just to have any chance of getting to the Pac-12 championship game at this point. They can't afford a second loss with UCLA and Oregon and USC all currently unbeaten in Pac-12 play. I know that they're going to play each other, but still, Utah has to win out to have any shred of a salvaged season that comes remotely close to meeting expectations. USC already exceeding its marks across the board, and just in terms of wins and losses, certainly in terms of defense. So don't let anyone tell you that this is the revealer for USC, and if the Trojans lose, they're a fraud or a phony. No, they're actually just going to have one loss going into the end of October. They're probably going to have just one loss going into November 19th. That still is way higher than all the preseason picks and the preseason expectations. Don't let anyone shift the goalposts and change the narrative about this game. I said on Twitter, this show is going to be spicy. Here at the Voice of College Football, we're coming out of the tunnel roaring.